Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's a great privilege for me to stand in this House today and speak on Bill C-304, an act to amend the Canadian Human Rights Act protecting freedom. I fully support this bill as it protects one of our most important rights as Canadians, that being the freedom of speech. In my years on our House of Commons Subcommittee on International Human Rights, we've often spoke out against repressive regimes around the world who trample the rights of their own citizens in the most severe ways. And yet, the fundamental right to freedom of speech is threatened here at home. I'm pleased that this bill proposed by the member from Westlock, St. Paul seeks to remedy just that. Madam Speaker, as you've heard from my colleague before me, freedom of speech is a fundamental right that provides the basis for all other rights to thrive and succeed. Without free speech, citizens cannot assemble publicly to peacefully demonstrate their opposition to government policies, an act fundamental to our democracy. Taken further, Madam Speaker, one could say that without freedom of speech, we could not worship God, we could not practice our faith, we could not join unions or speak out during elections or other moments of democratic participation. These are some of the very criticisms we have of totalitarian regimes. And we need only think of the recent events in Egypt and Libya and the ongoing Arab Spring to understand that, in the end, freedom of speech must always prevail. Madam Speaker, Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act is a direct attack on the freedom of speech that is guaranteed to us under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act allows the Canadian Human Rights Commission to prosecute anyone alleged to have said or written something likely to expose a person or persons to hatred or contempt, whether there's a living, breathing victim or not. In essence, this is like charging someone for the likelihood of breaking a law, but not yet breaking the law. Madam Speaker, for those that have seen the 2002 Hollywood blockbuster Minority Report, some might say it's starting to go down that path. The movie stars, amongst others, are three psychics called precogs. It depicts an eerie fictional future where the pre-crime department, along with supercomputers, labels criminals before they even commit a crime. However, the system ignores its own flaws or minority reports, in the end labeling innocent people and marginalizing a whole subclass who fall outside of the societal norms as directed from the top. Madam Speaker, while the movie is fictional and takes the point to the nth degree, what's true in reality today is that Section 13 is inconsistent with our democracy and our criminal code, which abides by the principle of charging someone after they commit a crime, not before. Madam Speaker, if that's the principle that our criminal code is governed by, why isn't this the principle also central in the Human Rights Act? That is what this bill from the member for Westlock St. Paul is aiming to do, bringing the principle of our tried and tested justice system to human rights, and consequently to the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Madam Speaker, for a clear example of the Section 13 hindering free speech here in Canada, we do not have to look far. For example, as the member from Westlock St. Paul previously alluded to, the Canadian Human Rights Commission investigator, Mr. Dean Stacey, was asked what value he gave freedom of speech in his investigations. To me, it's shocking that Mr. Stacey replied, "Freedom of speech is an American concept, so I don't give it any value. It's not my job to give value to an American concept." Madam Speaker, I take umbrage with that. Freedom of speech is very much a Canadian concept, one that we should be very proud of. And most importantly, in this second week after Remembrance Day, let us never forget the ultimate sacrifice made by thousands of Canadians from the trenches of Europe to the hills of Afghanistan so that we could enjoy so many freedoms, not the least of which is the freedom of speech, but also so millions suffering in Europe during the two world wars and in other conflicts since could also be free. Madam Speaker, the list of those affected and stifled by Section 13 is long and encompassing. Every journalist, writer, webmaster, blogger, publisher, politician, and private citizen in Canada can be subject of a human rights complaint for expressing an opinion or telling the truth on any given issue. With the ambiguity of Section 13, it is virtually impossible for any person to determine if they might be in violation of Section 13 or not. This, in a nutshell, creates a culture of forced censorship and punishment for those who dare speak their mind. This is wrong and cannot be justified in a free society that Canada credits itself to be. This is also unimaginable in the digital world that has reshaped how our society communicates, Madam Speaker. Is it possible that the 140 characters of a tweet could be misconstrued? Is it possible that a blog could be unduly censored? Bill C-304 can and will fix this, and that is why I'm standing in this House today to support it. Madam Speaker, there will be some who say that getting rid of Section 13 of the Human Rights Act will open the floodgates to hate speech and the like. As the member for Westlock St. Paul noted, Sections 318 through 320.1 of the Criminal Code already prohibit hate propaganda, including any written, sign, or visible representation that advocates or promotes genocide. There's nothing more vile in the world than hate propaganda. I have worked over the last few years to draw attention and take action on the rising threat of anti-Semitism for this very reason, Madam Speaker. Quite frankly, will some people say or continue to say things that are nasty, things that everyone in this House would find offensive? Certainly. However, so long as it's not hate propaganda, should we not defend their right to say it, so that we are preserving the right of all people to speak their minds, and in doing so, thereby preserving our right to speak out against unsavory speech? In closing, Madam Speaker, may I iterate the importance of free speech here in Canada. Our country was built on free speech. Our veterans have fought for free speech, and let us together as a House ensure free speech is not hindered the way Section 13 does today. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and God bless Canada.
Reprise du débat.